Hi, here's Michael Leander, and I am in New Delhi in India, where a number of international marketing experts and leaders have joined the DMAI 2014, and I'm with one of them now. She's a very, very interesting and very respected woman. She hails originally from the UK, but now she's down under. That means Australia. I'm going to let her introduce herself to you now.
Thank you. Jodie Sangster. I'm the CEO of the Association for Data-Driven Marketing and Advertising in Australia, and also the chair for the Global DMA, which represents all of the various direct marketing associations and data-driven marketing associations throughout the world.
Interesting. And you have experience from around the world.
I do. I have experience myself, obviously starting off in the UK for a number of years, over to Australia for about 6 or 7 years, looking very much kind of privacy and how you can use data. Then over to New York for 5 years, working with the DMA there and looking at the emerging markets as well. And now back to Australia as CEO of ADMA to really kind of drive forward what we now call data-driven marketing.
Yeah, and why that change? Why from direct marketing to data-driven marketing? What's the significance of that?
It was actually for a number of reasons. First of all, I think direct marketing is kind of a loaded term. People think of direct marketing as perhaps direct mail or telephone marketing or perhaps even email, but not much broader than that. And really that's not what direct marketing is about. So when you're talking to kind of direct marketers, they get it, but you talk to the wider marketing community, they're saying, well, no, that's the kind of junk mail side of things. So we wanted to make really clear that that's not what it's about. It's about using data to do smarter marketing. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what channel you're on. It doesn't matter if you're on above the line channels, if you're using kind of the traditional below the line channels or the new digital channels. If you're using data at any part of the marketing process, then you're doing data-driven marketing, and you really should be part of the association and part of that marketing community.
That's very well explained. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what is the change that you've seen, if we talk about Australia first, let's say over the past 5 years? So what is going on in the Australian market when we talk about these things?
Yeah, look, I think what's happening in the Australian market is the same as what's happening in markets all around the world, in that marketing has expanded out to far beyond doing marketing campaigns or marketing strategy. We're now looking at, you have to be across data, definitely, technology, which drives marketing. You have to be over content, which is that whole kind of engagement piece. You still need to be across creativity, but it's all kind of held together by this idea of customer engagement, that your whole job as a marketer now is to engage the customer. And the marketer really sits between possibly the customer kind of upwards and the marketing team or the business that sits underneath it and creates the link between the two. Yeah. So the role of the marketer has changed, and the role of the marketer within the business has also changed.
Absolutely. So if you compare Australia, for example, to the other markets where you've lived and worked, the North American market and Great Britain, what would we say are the differences in those three markets?
Yeah, I think the benefit that Australia has is that we're actually quite a small market, and that makes us agile. Yeah. We're able to change quite quickly and adopt quite quickly, and that's what I've really seen kind of going back to Australia after being in the US, is this idea of, once there is a new trend or there is a new marketing technology or a way of using data, Australia's very quick to kind of pick that up and start running with it. But at the same time, the downside of Australia, I would say, is that we don't have the scale. So whereas in the US you have got a big market over there, and you can really do some amazing kind of broad marketing campaigns using all sorts of new technologies and medias. You can't necessarily do that in Australia. Even some of the social media brands aren't in Australia because there's not enough of a market there. Yeah. What I would say about the US is they are way ahead in terms of technology, and that really has been adopted. But in terms of things like traditional marketing, such as direct mail, they've still got a real kind of hold there. Whereas a number of countries have moved on from direct mail, the US still has a real kind of following around catalogue and mail and the kind of more traditional forms of marketing, and they've merged that with other forms of marketing or partnered them up with other forms of marketing to make it more effective, whereas other countries have just bypassed mail and gone onto the digital technologies, but they will also go back. And with the UK I think is very advanced in data and always have been. And part of the reason for that is they've always had very strong data protection laws.
Yep.
So because of that, they've had to be very savvy around how they use data and the insights that they can get from data. And I think that's made them very intelligent around kind of data usage.
Yep.
And that really is starting to show now. I think they're kind of streets ahead in some areas around how they can use data, not only to drive marketing, but to drive business decisions, and there's a lot to be learnt from that market.
Absolutely. And if we look at just one question about data privacy, what is different when it comes to consumer protection, comparing those three markets as well?
Yes. Obviously the UK, being under the European regime, has a very strict approach to data protection and to privacy and how you can use customer data. And it almost starts from the point of kind of saying you really shouldn't be using data, and then they kind of work backwards from there, which has meant that UK or European marketers have had to do things in a much more structured way and often in a much more strategic way.
Yeah.
The US is an interesting one because the US previously has been kind of hands-off. The government always started with looking at the commercial reasons why you would need to use data, and that's always been the approach. That's now changing. So the government is now saying, actually, we're not sure about you using the data that you collect online, and we're not sure about the use of cookies and tracking and all of those sorts of things. And we think that you should perhaps the country should put some safeguards in place. So that's a real sign of the times. If the US is moving down that path, this is now a global issue. Australia kind of sits in the middle. So we do have quite tight privacy laws, but they're principles based, so it can be interpreted in certain ways. And it is we take a reasonably common sense approach to it. So marketing can happen, it does happen, and there is a balance between the need for business to do commerce and to protect the consumer. That said, I think the challenge is trying to make law now apply to these new channels. So when you're talking about how does law apply to social, how does it apply to use of location data, how does it apply to RFID, and nobody really knows the answer to it. And we've got a piece of legislation that's quite traditional, trying to apply it to new technologies. And there's always going to be a bit of a challenge there. So that's what we're working through at the moment.
Oh, that's a very, very interesting time. So just want to ask about India, because we are in India now, and you've been coming to this conference for the past, this is your third time, right?
That's right, yeah.
And you've been supporting it, you as a person, but also your association.
Sure.
All of what we just talked about, how do you see this play out in India? Where do you see India right now, and where do you think it's going? And when it comes to consumer protection, do they need to hurry?
It's an interesting one. For me, over the past 3 years, I've really seen the talk about marketing in India advance hugely. The first conference that was held by the DMAI, we were having such kind of initial conversations around using data, and the majority of companies in the room were kind of looking at it going, we're not even using data. We haven't got any data. I don't even know what to do with it. And if we did have it, where would I go? Yeah. And that's not the case anymore. Sitting in the sessions today, everyone is on top of it. So they've obviously probably come from behind, but moved at rapid speed to catch up and have the same types of conversation. I also think that India does have the benefit almost of, it hasn't got a lot of the legacy issues that other kind of more developed countries have. So things like, that you start with mail and move to telephone and we move to email and you kind of go through this process, they've leapfrogged. I mean, mobile is going to be everything, and India's going to be at the forefront of that. So I think there's some real benefits there. In terms of consumer protection, yes, I think that there does need to be something. And I don't think it's necessarily regulation. I do think it's something like a code of practice or standard procedures or benchmarks that need to be put in place, because quite quickly if there's a consumer backlash against what you're doing with marketing, quite quickly government will step in and regulate. So something does need to be done just to go, this is the base standard, everybody. We all are going to operate by these rules to make sure that we can market in future.
That's very well said. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And to you, thank you for watching. If you want to learn more about ADMA or Jodie, then you go to the links that you'll see somewhere around here. And on the ADMA site, there will be lots of resources that can teach you more, inspire you more about the issues that we've just talked about. So thank you so much for watching. Wishing you a great day today, and of course, all the other days.